Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's perfect. Just do what they say, you're good to go. Yesterday,
This
45. Yeah. 50 in January. Yeah.
Well, I think
Yeah.
there were three slides.
This morning after 12 games in, it felt like 80. We had 12 games in 13 days. Yeah. We started April 24th. Well, there's one stretch of the year where you get two back-to-back. So we went 6 days with Monday off, which means not all things to do everything and be ready to go for the next day. So it's on for 6. Monday was a no game, and then 6 more. So now we go on the road tomorrow, and we're gone for 13 days. We don't come back till I think it's 23rd or something like that. Most of May. So, we're still working, but yeah, I'm taking tomorrow off. So
Call Monday, May 8th, Common Council meeting to order. Clerk Jones, I believe you would like to make some comments regarding the link to this meeting and other expectations.
Yes. Good evening, members of the public. For audio quality, we will be muting everyone virtually not speaking by default to maintain good audio quality for council members as well as yourselves. If you would like to speak during the meeting on specific agenda items, please submit your request to speak in the chat, and directions to do so are located in the chat. We ask that you provide your full name and address, as those are required for all speakers at in-person meetings. If you would like to be called on during the meeting to provide public input, again, please insert your name and address in the chat, and you will be called on during the relevant times. You will be given 5 minutes to speak during public input. For citizens that wish to speak during the privilege of the floor, please insert your name and your address into the chat, and the council president will call on you. You will be given 3 minutes to speak during privilege of the floor. And please be sure to unmute yourself before giving your remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we will have Reverend Andrew Brown, of Mount Olive Missionary Baptist Church, come up for the invocation. Welcome, Reverend Brown.
Nope, this way, the other way.
Yep.
It's not quite like Sunday morning, huh? Eternal God, our Father, we thank you for this opportunity, Lord, that you have given us, and these that are gathered here to do the business of the city of South Bend. We pray, Lord, that you will bless them, strengthen their minds, their hearts, and their souls, and their spirits, oh God. Give them what they need to do in the way you would have them to do it. For your word says, let nothing be done in strife or vainglory, but in lowliness of mind let each esteem others better than themselves. For this was the mind that was in Christ Jesus. We pray that mind fall upon these who are in the decision-making policies, oh God. Touch them right now in the name of Jesus, who is Christ. Amen.
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 Thank you so much. May we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Thank you. Clerk Jones, will you call the roll, please? I believe Troy Warner is excused.
Also, I don't know if Henry is virtual, but I know he had an issue at home.
I know that Counselor Hammond said that she was going to be on virtual.
Okay. Councilmember Davis? I don't see him yet, but I will mark him when he comes in. Councilmember Lee?
Present.
Councilmember Warner? Councilmember Wax?
Present.
Councilmember White?
Present.
Councilmember Tomas Morgan?
Present.
Councilmember Hammond? Vice President Niskoski?
Present.
President McBride?
Present.
We have 6 present.
Thank you. At this time, we will go to the reports from the city. First up, we will have an update by Andrew Berlin from the South Bend Clubs. Thank you so much. Welcome. Please state your name and address for the record.
Andrew Berlin, 4 Winsfield, South Bend.
Thank you.
Is there a way to advance the presentation? Is there a clicker? I'll tell you when to flip. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. It's on the heels of some very good news that South Bend received from Indianapolis, the passage of the Senate Bill 326 that sends $100 million to South Bend in the form of $5 million a year for 20 years. There will be a bonding process, of course, in an effort to raise those funds earlier to do the kind of work that we want to do in the city, but it was fantastic news. And so with that, with those tailwinds, I'll proceed. And the first slide I start with is this word imagine. And the reason I start with this slide is just for a moment before I get into the details, and I will keep my presentation relatively short, even though I could wax on about the partnership with South Bend, which has been magnificent. When I first came to South Bend in 2011 and first met Mayor Lickey, the South Bend Silverhawks were in trouble. The team was having difficulty. I would say it's failing, but out of respect for our dear friend Governor Kernan, I won't say that it was quite really failing, but it was really struggling. I was on the cusp of leaving South Bend to go to the state of Illinois, to a city in central Illinois. And so I want just for a moment, if we can imagine what it would have been like not to have Four Winds Field, not to have South Bend Cubs anchoring a significant part of a tremendous renaissance in downtown South Bend, but not just South Bend and the entire region. You'll see on my presentation, and I'll foreshadow it, but we've had 3.2 million people come to South Bend, come to Four Winds Field since we've had it. And we're going to improve and increase that number dramatically for the next 8 to 10 years with the kind of investment that the state is making. An investment that does not require us to increase taxes. It only keeps the income taxes and sales taxes that are paid in a certain part of the city from going to Indianapolis and simply staying in South Bend. So with that fixture in your mind, what downtown looks like, without all of this going on in our little corner of downtown, let's proceed with the presentation to the next slide. So today, the ballpark looks pretty good. I'm here with Joe Hart, the president of the South Bend Cubs. He and his team have done a wonderful job winning all sorts of awards. As you might imagine, Major League Baseball, when they absorbed minor league baseball, there used to be 160 minor league teams in the United States. Now there are a little less than 140. Many of those cities that used to have ballparks no longer have an affiliated team, no longer have minor league baseball. If we hadn't made the improvements up until this point, South Bend wouldn't have a baseball team either. But Joe and his team at the South Bend Cubs have won awards for their fields, the best field in minor league baseball. We've won best ballpark in all of the United States twice in 2015, 2017, but we're not resting on our laurels. This is not just about increasing revenues. It's not just about having an enterprise that makes some money, but it's about this mission that we had to really improve not only everything around us, but also to drive economic development for all of South Bend, and in particular in our downtown corridor where we are. It is a jewel, but it's going to become even more special as we move forward. Next slide, please. It's hard to tell from this particular aerial rendering what we're going to do, but I'm going to get into a little bit of detail. Before I get into the detail, however, what the ballpark is going to look like, why don't we slip to the next slide, and I believe that's a very short 2-minute video. So it's always been more than a game. If you just make sure our volume is up a little too, but thank you.
At the beginning of the World Series of 1947, I experienced a completely new emotion when the national anthem was played. This time, I thought it was being played for me.
It's always been more than just a game. 80 years ago in this town, for a handful of men and women born here, it changed everything. For Betsy Yoakum and others who played for the South Bend Blue Sox, and Ted Strong, who played for the Kansas City Monarchs, baseball was a big deal. Even a way out. Studebaker alone had over a dozen factory teams. But by the time Ted passed away in the late 70s, the factory teams were mostly history. Until Mayor Roger Parent had an idea that would someday lead to a renaissance for South Bend, building a professional stadium. The team in the stadium nurtured by the next mayor, soon to be governor, Joe Kernan ultimately found a new owner who not only committed to the city of South Bend, but put his own money into a stadium owned by the citizens of this great city. The Renaissance? Yeah, it took a while, but when it got here, wow. Baseball's a big deal again, and the future is bright. The South Bend Cubs have committed to this great city for decades to come, and legislators like Maureen Bauer, David Niskotsky, Ryan Mishler, Jake Teshka, and others have paved the way to make this city more of a
dramatic
draw
pauses.
by
That's good.
expanding Roger
Thank you.
Parent's original idea, which, by the way, has paid off in big, big ways. Baseball's more than just a game. A lot more. Ask Betsy Yoakum. Ask Ted Strong. Here's to the next several decades of professional baseball in the city of South Bend, and the next generation of professional players. Here's to the city and the citizens of South Bend, Indiana.
What's marvelous about this presentation is especially the fact that it's a city-owned stadium, owned by the people of South Bend. It's created a partnership with me and my team, where whatever we do here, it stays in South Bend. Whatever we're able to achieve in improving the ballpark, we can't and won't take it with us. The Cubs are here to stay as long as you want them here, as long as people come out to the games. And so it's been a success, but we're not done. So if we go to the next slide, you'll see some of the renderings of what we're going to be planning here. So for example, we're going to go up a whole nother deck above us where all the suites will line from all the way from one end of the stadium to the other. You'll see additional seats outside the suites, and then we'll be opening up the concourse below, and you'll see that in future slides. You'll also see in the left field corner, there's going to be party space, convention space, conference space, and other clubs and amenities where we can attract and bring more corporations to downtown South Bend to do their entertaining in our city. The next slide, please. Another view, this time from the left field corner, looking back towards the center, and you'll see what these look like. Again, another slide. Next slide. We're also going to capture some of the architecture of Wrigley, some of the open iron and beams that hold up the signs and the lights at Wrigley. And we're bringing those arches of steel here to South Bend to kind of give a sense of the connection between Four Winds Field, the South Bend Cubs, and the Chicago Cubs. And if you remember Wrigley and the roof of Wrigley, this is reminiscent of what the roof looks like there. There's also going to be a concourse in the left field corner that'll have a bridge extending the top part of the suites across to the building you saw in left field corner, and a more dramatic entrance there in the corner of South Bend. And it's going to have, ivy on the walls there. It's going to be a large concourse. And of course, it'll have a lot of brick and a lot of iron and just drive a more beautiful, beautiful park. And this is what the meeting center will look like in left field corner. Next slide. So what we also like about the investment in the ballpark is it's also attracted a number of different developments in downtown South Bend. And if you know about the Real America baseball investment, I think has attracted 60 new units of housing, half of which are assigned for low-income families. We built our own 4 Ivy apartment buildings along the outside of the outfield with balconies overlooking the ballpark. But there are a number of people that are building more homes, more apartments in downtown South Bend than ever before in the last several years. When I was here, we didn't have that kind of population growth when I first arrived in 2011. So I'm sure all of you are very familiar with just the growth and how busy it is, again, downtown. Next slide. Another comment here, you could read for yourself. I don't want to read the slides to you, in the essence of time. Next slide. Next slide again. So a little bit about Senate Bill 326. Next slide. The original law for the PSDA was in 2017. It expired in 2017. We passed the new law in 2021 to take the cap up to $2.5 million. The other number would have been better, I'm sure. And then we increased it to $5 million just recently, which is also commensurate with what Fort Wayne gets. Next slide. The revenue that we're currently generating, that the city is currently generating with income tax and sales tax in the prescribed area, is easily expected to exceed the $5 million gap. So it's going to ensure a very strong bond offering, which is very good news, and keep the expenses down on the bond. And of course, it represents $100 million in new revenue to the city of South Bend if we wait the 20 years to collect it. So a little historical perspective. Next slide. The city was built in 1987 for just a hair less than $10 million, but we rounded up to $10 million. With the work that we have done together, the city and ourselves, we have done a very good job in keeping the fine bones of that stadium, which is wonderful. In the manner in which it was built, I don't know if you were aware of this, but the foundation and the pilings that were used in putting the roof over the lower concourse, the same foundation can be used as we go up in another floor. So it was actually built to contemplate a second level. So it'll save us a lot of money on foundational work. Next slide. Again, something to note, since 1998, no property taxes or general funds have been used to improve the stadium. We've done it all on our own with you. And only 2 unique sources have been used to improve the stadium and surrounding properties. Again, the city and myself. Next slide. I made an investment of $32 million in the area. Between around $9 million of my own money, I invested in the city-owned stadium. I know when I got here, the city was not in a position to make the investment itself, so I made the investment from my own personal funds. And then I built the 4 apartment buildings that surround the stadium. But it was important to demonstrate to the city that I was all in as well. You would be very, very hard-pressed to find an owner, at least in minor league baseball, that would have done something like that, but when I had faith. And of course, $1.75 million was earned by the team through the original PSDA law, which was used to improve the stadium. So, as I said before, we're not going anywhere, and we've decided to extend our agreement through the 2044 season. And it'll either be up to my sons, my daughters, or maybe another owner someday to take it even beyond that. But I plan to be around for a while. I'll do my very level to best, but I'd love to extend it even beyond 2044. As I mentioned before, we've drawn more people to the city of South Bend than any other local amenity, 3.2 million people since I arrived in South Bend. That's to the ballpark. And of course, a larger enhanced stadium will bring even more. So the idea is that we want to increase the seating capacity, maybe is up to about 50%. There are so many games that we have throughout the season that we're sold out. This will give us the opportunity to bring more people in. The more people that come in, the more sales taxes are collected, the better it is for the city and a city-owned stadium. So again, you can imagine this would be so, but not only with the construction, but with the employees and the people that will be surrounding South Bend and surrounding the ballpark, it'll bring more jobs and economic activity, and you'll see even more PSCDA revenue. Something to keep in mind, and I'll be finishing up here in a moment, Major League Baseball has imposed new standards for minor league stadiums. Any stadium that doesn't keep up with the standards that Major League Baseball is now imposing, once Major League Baseball took over minor league baseball, they lose their affiliation. So whether it's lights or the field or the facilities for the players, for the umpires, for the coaches, having amenities for female coaches, female umpires, it all has to be there or you lose your affiliation. It's that strict. So there are going to be needs for improvements, and we're going to make all of those improvements here within the next couple of years. And we've worked hard to make sure the city doesn't lose the affiliation. And just so you know, we're not wasting any time. The bill was signed last Thursday, and we had our first planning meeting with the city this morning. So we had about 10 or 12 people on the call. It was at 9 o'clock this morning, and we're already off to the races. And so I'm really excited to see that everybody is leaning in and leaning in very, very well. We're working well together, as we always have. Again, just a little education. This is not TIF financing. Obviously, TIF projects are owned by the developer. In this case, the project is still owned by the city. With all of these improvements, it's still a city-owned stadium, which is terrific. And the operation, the professional team is the private investment, and that's what we're doing. Next step, we have to extend the area to capture the income taxes and sales taxes, and that resolution is coming before the City Council very shortly. And we need to do that before June 30th. And with that, I'll take any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much for that awesome presentation. I'm excited for the city and for what you all have brought to us, and exciting news for our payers that we're not raising taxes, and also to the attraction that is coming to our city and the phenomenal job that you have done over the years. So thank you for the charge and the lead with that, and have to give kudos to Joe for your tireless works as well. So thank you so much for your efforts. At this time, I will open it up for my colleagues if there's any questions at this time.
I don't have questions, I just have comments.
I'll open it up for questions and/or comments, so it's
Okay.
appropriate.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to thank you. I remember when you first started this journey, your commitment was strong then, it's even stronger now for your own personal investment in our city, but also the vision that you have continuously articulated to take us higher, new beginnings, new visions. Can we imagine? And to see where we're at as a city and the stadium and all of your supporters, but also Joe and others. It's been a great, great experience. And again, I'm extremely grateful for you and your team and what has been done for the city of South Bend.
It means a great deal to me. Thank you very much. We really have poured our hearts into this. It's really been more of a business. It's more than just a business. If you imagine being in a business where you get to throw a party for 8,100 of your neighbors, it's an extraordinary experience. And Joe and his team really do make us all look good. So
Thank you.
thank you, Joe.
I'll go down the line. Councilor Tomas Morgan.
Yes, thank you, President. Mr. Berlin, I want to add my thanks and gratitude to your imagination, your vision, your investment in the city of South Bend. I live on Chapin Street, so not far from the ballpark, and so have seen this amazing investment over the 20 years that I've lived in that neighborhood, and we benefit every Friday from those wonderful fireworks in the summer. So my family very much enjoys going to the ball games. My question relates to is part of the expansion also to increase the training facility as well? Is
No.
that part of the investment?
No, the training facility is actually owned by myself.
Okay.
So any kind of work that's done on the performance center would be either the Cubs or myself investing there. So that is my building. So it won't be used for my building.
Okay.
But the rest of it, yeah, we'll not only be adding and improving, but we'll also, since the ballpark was built in 1987, and much of the one kitchen, if you can believe, there's only one kitchen that serves the entire ballpark. And that's on the second floor of the main building. So that one elevator in the entire ballpark has to move people and food and spread it out through the entire ballpark. It's so inefficient and arguably just bad. So we really want to improve the food distribution and the efficiency of the stadium as well. So we'll be improving even the 1987 part of this as well.
Okay, great. And you do have the best hot dogs in town.
We do have the best hot dogs. I agree.
Thank you.
Councilor Lee.
Yes, I just would like to say thank you for the presentation. It is so good to know that this ballpark has been such a important part of the revitalization of the downtown area. And my father was a baseball person, and one of the greatest pleasures was to be able to take him to the Cubs games. And I just want to tell you just how much joy that place brings so many people. And we've taken inner city kids who've had and didn't have an opportunity to see a professional ball game before, and they just had a blast. And we do it every year. And so I just want to tell you thank you for your investment, thank you for your vision, and very much excited about the Cubs Stadium and all that it's going to do and all that it's going to be. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Councilor Niezgodski.
Thank you, President McBride. Yeah, I don't have much more to add than my colleagues have kind of already said, but just watching that presentation and seeing you before us, thinking of all the collaborative efforts that have brought the park to where it is at right now, to me is just, it's amazing. It's part of our South Bend history now, and you are going to be part of that history as well, because your vision is just amazing, your own personal investment because of how much you believed in the stadium. And it's really, the love of the game.
Yes,
I
it
remember
is.
Joe Kernan loved baseball. He truly loved it with all of his heart. And I'm sure that he would just love to see where it's at now. God bless him. But thank you so much for your investment in the community. It brings so much joy to families. I've been to so many picnics there and events there. My grandchildren love it there. They loved all the activities you have for children. So it's really just a wonderful place and a gem for the city of South Bend. And I just can't thank you enough. I know it's been a lot of work to get to where you're at, but you got there, and it's a blessing.
Thank you very much. You know, anything that's worth it takes a lot of work. But I will say this, and Mr. Lee, I don't know if your father is still with us. Is he?
He passed away this
Yeah.
past February.
Yeah, it reminds me of a story when the Cubs won the World Series in 2016. The Chicago Tribune covered that Game 7 when the Cubs were about to clinch. And in cemeteries throughout Chicago, there were people sitting in lawn chairs with their laptops streaming the game because they wanted to be with their fathers and mothers and grandmothers and grandfathers to watch the game with them. It really is about family. You would think it's about baseball, but it really isn't. Each and every one of you have made comments about how wonderful it is, and I agree. But the wonderful part is actually coming there with family and friends and sharing an experience. Win or lose, you can still have a great time there.
Counselor Wax.
Thank you. And you literally took the words out of my mouth. I was going to comment on the fond memories that I had going to the South Bend Cubs with my father and siblings as a little kid, and now being able to share that experience with my own children is really wonderful. And I just wanted to thank you for your faith in and belief in the city of South Bend and its future. Sorry to change the theme by asking a question. You mentioned the two income sources for the previous investments. You mentioned yourself, and the other one is
The city.
The city.
Yeah.
So what's the total investment that's been made over the past?
Boy, the total investment, I know that my investment's been about $32 million. That included the 4 apartment buildings and what I've done with the stadium itself. The city, I would probably say about 18 million. Yeah, it's been wonderful. I mean, to rebuild that stadium today would probably be about a $75 million endeavor. So that I think the city of South Bend can take a bow, if you will, generation upon generation of leaders here, that something you built for about $9.5 million actually increased in value to about $75 million. And so the investment keeps going as long as it continues to be relevant, and it will for many, many years to come. We'll all leave it behind for the generations that come after us, and I think it's a real jewel. It's a real jewel.
So worthy investment. And then you mentioned, so the likely procedure would be to issue a bond against advanced
Yes.
sales tax. Do you have a timeline for that, or?
Well, interest rates are a little high right now, so it'll impact what the bond will yield. So we'll try to hold off until perhaps interest rates improve. But in the meantime, we do have the funds to begin the planning stages.
Wonderful.
And the hope is that we'll break ground the day after the '24 season, because we don't want to disrupt the season itself. So the day after the last game of 2024, and we'll try to get and we will have the stadium open by the first day, or April of '25. Whether or not the whole project is done, I doubt it. We'll probably have it done sometime during the '25 season or a little bit after the '25 season, but we'll be working on parts outside the bowl, so it won't disrupt the crowd or the game.
Wonderful, thank you.
Sure.
I'll turn to my colleagues online to see if Counselor Davis, if you have any questions or comments, and also Counselor Lori Hammond.
Councilman Davis said he can't hear yet, so we're trying to work on that now.
Okay.
I'm not sure if Councilmember.
With that being said, thank you, Mr. Berlin,
Thank
for
you
the
very much.
presentation. We're looking forward to working with you and continued improvements. We thank you so much.
The one thing I do have for you, it is not the presentation you just saw, but it's a list of all the different things that we've done from a philanthropic standpoint. About $2 million in philanthropy has been achieved from the South Bend Cubs to city
Can we
entities.
get that, please?
So may I give this to the clerk?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we will move on to our update on Cherry Street. We have Leah Thiel, the Director of Sustainability, MACOG. Let me see, we have Caleb here from Community Investment. Yes. And Chris. Okay. Oh, we have the dream
evening,
team up here
Council members,
today.
we've got a good group here, and so I'll start by introducing myself, Caleb Bauer, Executive Director of Community Investment, with offices on the 14th floor of this building, joined by Chris Dressel, Senior Planner in the Department of Community Investment, Leah Till with MACOG, Mark Aspich from the St. Joseph County Health Department, and Dave Jeffers from Roberts Environmental. So we'll all be switching off here to share updates to you on a couple of parcels in the near West Side neighborhood. So just to kind of give you the overview, there were a few parcels that came up during the near West Side neighborhood process as concerns for neighbors, and there have been ongoing conversations about a number of these parcels. So the three we're going to hone in on today to discuss is, they're designated here, 1, 2, 3. Number one is the former Oil Express property on West Washington Street, which is owned by the South Bend Redevelopment Commission. Number two, just to the south of that, on Cherry Street, is the former South Bend Range Building, privately owned and was on certificate sale this last year. It was, a bid was placed, but then was not ultimately, a petition for issuance of that tax deed wasn't filed. So that means that it'll go back to tax delinquency, still remains with the existing private owner. And then parcel number three, the former Hurwich Iron Works, which is the large groupings of parcels here that are along the railroad track there and the vacated rail line in the middle of these parcels. So three distinct parcels here. One of them is owned by the Redevelopment Commission, and we'll give you an overview of activities at each of these parcels as we proceed today. So I'll bring Chris up, and he can share a little bit more about the Near West Side Neighborhood Plan, which is when neighbors shared concerns about these parcels and kind of kicked off some activity around all three of these, and then we'll go through each of the parcels.
Thanks, Caleb. Good evening, everyone. Again, Chris Dressel, Department of Community Investment, offices on the 14th floor of this building. If you'd indulge us just for a moment, just to take you back to last year, you recall we sort of initiated the conversation that we're continuing today, and that was also around the same time that the councils heard the Near West Side Neighborhood Plan and adopted the same back in September. So just to cover a lot of information in that plan, but just a couple of things that we'll cover today. Just a quick plan project highlight and the plan zoning as it pertains to our subject matter today. Again, the Near West Side Neighborhood Plan, part of a series of neighborhood plans that we're doing, continuing to do for different parts of the city. In this plan, it had a number of major components, it had a series of projects that we're looking to achieve over the next 20 years. And those planned project areas are denoted here with the numbering system. And on the far west side of the neighborhood, that's sort of the red box highlighting, so we'll focus on that. And just mention a couple of these things in a little more detail. One of which was the commentary about industrial reuse for the area number one, and that's the area that includes the sites that Caleb just pointed out, the Hurwich Iron site and also the site, the former South Bend Range site as well. So that was something that we wanted to address, was encourage new uses here and assess and address environmental conditions as necessary. And then I'll skip to number three, which is talking about the 1500 block of West Washington Street. That's a property that we denoted in the plan as one that we'd like to see be reused as multi-use with multifamily housing and also mixed use. So want to point those out. And then just to get on to the topic of environmental activities and some of the updates that we have, I think it's important to note anytime we're doing sort of brownfield or activity or environmental activities like such, it's all about reducing the number of known unknowns. I think we've done that, and we'll have those results for you very briefly, very quickly. And then obviously encountering some unknown unknowns, but I think we've definitely made some strides in that area. So just a recap on some of that and give you some of the terminology and language real quick. Obviously, the plan was used as a framework to address a whole range of issues and priorities. Brownfield sites were just one of those, and it's not a detailed roadmap. And then brownfield, that quick definition, it's property it's experiencing some holdup due to real or perceived concerns, and then just recognize environmental issues are complex. There's a whole host of different ways that they can be addressed, and looking for solutions for future use. And then in the due diligence, the tools that we have available to us, the most common ones are what's referred to as the phase one, which is sort of a historical inventory and interview regarding the use on the site. And then a phase two, which is looking at testing and sampling, going as far as a remediation plan for the site as well. So we'll take you back to that map and look at site number one, the former Oil Express in the 1500 block of West Washington. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Leah.
Yes, hi, I'll keep it very brief. My name is Leah Thill, Director of Sustainability with the Michiana Area Council of Governments, with offices on the 11th floor of this building. I just wanted to update you that MACOG has fully funded the sampling work that we're talking about. We're investing about $42,000 of our grant funding that we secured from the EPA, and we have additional funding set aside both for additional sampling that may be needed on this site as well as South Bend Range. Currently, we only have eligibility to work on that site, but this is something we prioritized from day one when we were applying for this funding. We were thinking about this area in South Bend. So with that, I'll introduce our environmental professional to talk a little bit more about the results from sampling that was conducted this year on this site. MACOG has contracted directly with Metric Environmental, which is a minority-owned business, and they've subcontracted with Roberts Environmental, and we have a person from Roberts, Dave Jeffers, who's here to talk with you about that. So turn it over to Dave.
Thank you, Dave Jeffers, Senior Hydrogeologist with Roberts Environmental. We're out of Goshen, Indiana. I actually live in St. Joe County, though. So let's go ahead and advance here. How do you advance it? Oh, there we go.
You got it.
So we did sampling across the entire Part 1 site, if you will. So we did a good, whoops. Oh, there we go. Is it going now? Doesn't want to work. There we go. So we did sampling. All these little dots are where we took soil, groundwater, and soil gas vapor samples. And what we found in the groundwater really isn't that bad. One of our 7 samples was over a screening level, and we know the river's over to the east, and that exceedance was right up here at B1, which is right on the western property boundary. So we actually think that exceedance is coming from an off-site area to the west of the property, not from the actual site. Soil gas, very similar results. We had 1 exceedance, and I believe that was down over in B12, but again, it was barely over what they call an IDEM screening level. It was very low. Matter of fact, it's so low that we'd probably want to go back and confirm that exceedance was even real, if you will. So every one of these dots, we took a soil sample, so that becomes a driver a lot, especially when you're going for redevelopment on the residential side of things. So out of the 27 samples we took, I'm a data guy, obviously, only 9 of them were over, and we all know our high school math, that's 33%. So 70% of the site, we didn't have any exceedances in soil. So, which is really this whole east and central portion of the site was all quote-unquote clean. And if we take care of some of those with a cap or digging those up, that's where we start to talk about, can we redevelop the site? Well, yes, we can. And another important consideration is all those samples that were over were from a layer of fill material that we found, and it was anywhere from 3 to 5 feet thick across the site, and that it could be, it almost looks like blackish type. There's coal stored there back in the day, cinder gravel, but that was all below the surface. So on the surface here, you have, as you saw in the street view, it's the city takes care of the site, the city owns it, it's mowed with a vegetative cover, but we also found there's anywhere from 3 to 12 inches of clean topsoil across the site that's been added, that's above this fill. So I know some people had some concerns about children playing soccer or just walking their dogs on the site. So as long as nobody's out there digging, we should be good as far as the current receptor issues. And then in general, and Leah can attest to this, that this site is generally not bad. We've seen way worse than this site in our work we've done with MACOG. So again, I guess any questions on the data as far as the environmental samples? Or do you want to wait till questions at the end, Leah?
We'll
Okay.
wait to the
Yeah.
end.
Thanks.
Good evening. Mark Espick, St. Joe County Health Department. I'm the Director of Environmental Health. And offices in the 8th floor, 9th floor of this building. So South Bend Range on Cherry Street was brought to our attention by a couple councilmen. And so they were concerned about it. I was able to find a hole in the fence, went in, did an inspection of the property. We didn't like what I was seeing, ended up getting a hold of IDEM, the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, had them come take a look at the site, sent them a bunch of pictures. There were piles of drums outside in various conditions. A lot of them were just rusted through, leaking all over the place. Some really old material in there, but there was also just a lot of piles of combustible material that looked like it could, catch on fire. Then we would have this toxic plume floating over the city. We wouldn't know what was in it. So it was a pretty big concern of ours. And then working with IDEM, they reached out to EPA. EPA came in immediately, got everything secured. We have a total of 76 drums on site and about 35 5-gallon or less containers. Our contact with EPA, they're hoping to get the stuff out maybe by the end of this month. It's still on site. Everything's been characterized and staged in a secure location. But then the train derailment in Ohio, Kevin he's been over there ever since that took place. So, but he's hoping to get the drums out the end of this month.
Great, and then moving on to the third site, part of this discussion, which is the former Hurwich Iron Works, largest of the 3 sites. Don't have a lot from the city end to share, but just wanted to share some changes. There has been a new change in ownership there. So Rochester Metals is a company out of Rochester, Indiana. They have purchased all of the parcels that encompass the Hurwich Iron Works site and are in the process of planning a potential investment there. This company generally has a history of purchasing sites with potential environmental contamination and remediating them and then making investments on the site. So a good track record from the company. That site had been under an IDEM enforcement action. And so that means that the Indiana Department of Environmental Management was investigating potential concerns there. I think the new property owner has been cooperative. There was a phase 2 conducted on the site, I believe within the last 6 months. And so We're optimistic with the new ownership that they have, one, been cooperative with IDEM, and two, that site is moving in a positive direction. We'll be sure to engage cooperatively with that owner, but that's really the high-level update there. Mostly has been handled by IDEM and the private owner up to this point. So all that to say, there are definitely next steps for a couple of these sites. The Oil Express site, which is owned by the city, we will pursue additional sampling funds available through MACOG, and then explore the opportunities for cleanup grants through the state of Indiana. There were some points of concern on that site, and so we would look to remediate those. Additionally, then on Cherry Street, like Mark shared, the EPA will be out to remove those drums. Again, those have already been secured, they're encapsulated, so they're sealed. They just need to be removed from the site and disposed of properly, and we hope EPA will be able to do that here in short order. And then additionally, MACOG will pursue potential additional sampling funds that would come with the cooperation of the property owner there to ensure that there hasn't been any additional contamination of the soil from those drums. So that's kind of the high-level overview of these sites. Appreciate your time and interest in these, and I think with that, we'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. At this time, I'll go down the line again, and if you don't mind, I'll start with Councilor White, since I know that you had been requesting the meetings with the various partners, with myself and the county council and the city as well, with MACOG and the health department. So if you could go ahead, that would be great.
I would just like to thank all the individuals that did come together. We've been discussing this for quite some time. I want to say since September, or maybe later than that. But I would like to say that for the record, the concerns did not grow out of the plan for many of years. And I want to say at least 50-some years, there have always been concerns about Cherry Street and also about Hurwich Arn. And so those have been ongoing concerns from an environmental perspective. So I don't want it to be stated or viewed that because of the plan, that these concerns were raised, as well as I begin to look at what type of investment is the Rochester company planning on putting in that site? What type of company?
Generally, they work in metal processing, so some form of metal processing facility, but I don't have,
Yeah.
I haven't spoken directly with the company.
Because I'm looking at, is that what we want? And I know we may have a zoning concerns, but if you look at housing, and you looking at the West Washington site for housing, if I'm not mistaken.
The neighborhood plan does contemplate multifamily housing on that, on the Oil Express site.
So is that the type of investment that we would want homeowners to live around? Because not only, we really are looking at three different issues. The first one was the Oil Express, and that's redevelopment property. You have the South Bend Range, which is up for tax sales again, and then you have Hurwich Arn. So you have these three entities. And how do they come together to really reach a comprehensive approach towards what is best for that particular area? Again, these are long-term issues.
Well, I think on the South Bend Range property, that's one that the city has indicated, our Department of Community Investment, we've indicated our willingness to purchase the tax certificate. Well, not purchase it, but have it transferred to the city from the county commissioners. Generally, how that's worked in the past when we've done that is that occurs after it is unpurchased at certificate sale. So because there was payments made against the property taxes, it will revert to tax sale and then certificate sale. And then we would seek and request that the county commissioners transfer that tax certificate to the city. So that would allow the city to own the South Bend Range site and work to remediate or demolish the building there, whatever is necessary as we we'll hopefully discover from further sampling of that site.
Because I'm looking at what are the plans for this area when you look from Walnut going all the way down to Hurwich Iron. When you look at Cherry Street, there's only 4 houses, and one is vacant. It's not, no one's living there. You go on the next street, there's only 2 or 3. And so we look at putting permanent housing, but you look at the surrounding, it's more industrial, more so than, wanting someone to live in that area. I know I probably would not want to with all of that surrounding me. So those are concerns I have.
Well, I think, the neighborhood plan contemplates potential multifamily there. Obviously, there was a rezoning request a number of years ago for that site. At this point in time, we don't have any plans or, we haven't been in any conversations with developers related to that site. And I think to the west of the site, the Hurwich Iron site, we still believe is a good industrial use, would be an appropriate use there. It lies on the railroad tracks. It has historically been an industrial use, and so it is still zoned for industrial.
Okay, I'll come back.
Okay.
Councilwoman Thomas Martin.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bauer and others for this update and pertinent information. I just have a few comments and question. So it's my understanding that in the 80s and 90s, previous administrations had addressed brownfield remediation across the city to some extent. I know standards change over time, and so that leads me to my question, was there a particular event that triggered additional soil samplings at the time that the testing started?
No, Leah can potentially speak to this, but I think it was primarily driven by resident requests and concerns. We had heard concerns about the city-owned property, the Oil Express property, and what contamination could or could not be there. But Leah, you...
Yeah, I recall back in 2019, there was a city council meeting where
Correct.
the permanent supportive housing project came up, and I think a number of the council people mentioned environmental concerns, and it was
Yes.
like what Chris was saying, we just didn't know, and not knowing is not a good position to be in if there are health risks related to exposure and environmental contamination. So MACOG wanted to help the city know what's there, and that's the step of that we've taken, but we don't have a current direction forward as far as a specific planned use. So at this point, we would not do additional sampling because now we know it's not a danger. But in order to redevelop it for some use, it would need some additional sampling and limited cleanup.
Thank you.
Just a follow-up question. I was at those long meetings and part of the neighborhood conversation around that. I so know this intimately. I think my I guess kind of outstanding question is, my understanding is that when we go to pursue development, that these environmental testings occur and any remediation then would happen based on what the land use is. So that's, I guess, my working knowledge of how we move forward to address these kinds of environmental concerns. Is that correct?
Correct. So, if we were to go back to 2019 with that rezoning request, if that developer, South Bend Heritage, had moved forward with the project, they would have needed to conduct a Phase 2 environmental on the site themselves, and they then would have to, if they were going to build there, if there was need for remediation, they would do that at that time. So that's generally standard practice, that we have Phase 1s on many of the properties that the city owns. Those are reviews of records, historical data. But a Phase 2, which involves physically boring the soils, we do in circumstances where the Phase 1 may indicate that there could be concerns. And then additionally, then those are always something that would be necessary before someone were to develop a site.
Okay, so that is standard practice and diligence moving forward.
Yeah, and just real quick, I think what Leah alluded to, since we don't have a plan yet, so once you have a plan in place where the buildings are gonna be, where the parking lots are gonna be, well, then you can tailor your sampling plan. So do we need to sample surface soil where there's gonna be an asphalt parking lot? Well, probably not. So we have a good general idea of where the bad spots, I guess, if you will, so we can work with that planner to say, this would be a good spot for green space or to walk your dog, and this might be better spots for a parking lot or building. So you kind of try to tailor that sampling and the development to what you have, you know, to save cost on the remediation portion of that, so.
Great. That's helpful. Thank you.
Counselor Lee?
Yes, first of all, thank you all for the presentation. We know that this has been a great concern for many people for a long amount of time. And I just wanted to be clear that out of 27 areas, there were only 9 spots that were abnormal. And even the abnormal was very low.
For soil, some of the spots were higher, with lead specifically. There was 3 spots that were high for lead. But again, we're not too worried about it because we know it's from that fill layer, is the reason it's impacted, and we have clean soils and the vegetative cover. So, like I said, unless somebody's taking a shovel out there or an excavator, nobody's gonna contact that. But, so those are really what I don't even wanna call them hot spots really, but the areas that would need either a cap or to be dug up and basically removed from the site, so, yeah.
How big are those areas?
Actually, 3 of those spots are from the far northwest corner, so there's actually 3 different spots. And I think I pointed out the whole central area and the northeastern area was, there you go, yep, see if this thing works again. Okay, so this cluster right up here of these 3 borings, they were all over. And then I believe it was down B15 here, and then 1 spot way over here. So this whole quadrant here was clean. So that's kind of what we're getting at. Do you go ahead and clean up these spots that we know? And then the rest are just averaged out, if you will, and are clean below the screening levels. And I'm talking residential screening levels here. So that's what you have to contemplate as far as a cost scenario. Do you want to go ahead and dig those up and remove them? Should you just cap the whole site with what's required is 2 feet of clean soil? So those are the things you'd have to do, a cost analysis, basically, what's the best thing. And I know there's limits on the grants you can get, so you kind of want to factor all that in. What's your cap on cost and what can you do for that price? So, but it's definitely doable.
So the consensus is that it's not as bad as we thought it was. And the areas that are bad, they can be remediated pretty easily.
Yes, that's a good generalization, yes.
All right, thank you. I just have to understand in the simple terms. Okay.
Councilman Nisgowsky?
Thank you, President McBride. I just had a question back to the Cherry Street, 76 drums on site. You said some were leaking and that they're now encapsulated and ready for removal. In the area where those were found, where there'll be some samples taken there, or a phase 2, so to speak, to see exactly what that contamination is, or are you just going to wait?
Yes. We will fund sampling for that, but we cannot do anything on site until the EPA gives us the all clear. So,
Okay.
but we have that in our plan and we've budgeted for it.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood clearly that process. Thank you.
And I just want to take the time to say thank you for the collaboration and meetings that we have had over the course of several months, and talking about, the abating of the juries as well as this site, and for MACOG and the Health Department, and along with IDEM and EPA, to get involved and to want to help and coming in and encapsulating everything right now. It's just refreshing to hear that it's not, we thought that it was bad, and we do have some work to do, but just happy to know that back in 2019, I had gotten on the council in 18, and this was one of the first, projects that was halted because they were talking about putting the permanent supportive housing there. So to bring this to the forefront and to get it cleaned up is great work. So thank you so much. You have anything?
Thank you. Just, you said on that site there's, the lead is covered with a cleaner surface layer?
That's correct. Yes.
How deep or
I
how
can
tall is
tell
that
you
surface layer?
exactly, yeah. The one lead was taken from a foot down. The other lead was 1 to 3 feet, and one was actually 3 to 5 feet down. So.
Thank you.
At this time, I'll turn to my colleagues online to see if they're on and see if they have any questions. I'll start with Councilor Lori Hammond. If not, I'll turn to Councilor Henry Davis to see if he has been able to hear and to speak.
Yeah, thank you. I'm on my phone now. For whatever reason, it's not happening with my computer. But the phone is a computer as well, so whatever. No, I don't have any, thoughts or anything. No, I shouldn't say that. I do. I know when you go into developing an area, there are obviously rules that are state mandated and they're federally mandated as well. As we're talking and the conversation continues to talk about just the placement of dirt in the position that it exists right now, what happens when a person or a developer wants to come in and redevelop the site for maybe housing or whatever it may be? Does that change the environment and how we look at it at that point? It has to.
Well, generally, if there was a developer interested in the site, what our department would do is, oftentimes the developer would say, I'm interested in this site. Does the city have any phase 1s or phase 2s? So either that historical documentation, which is a phase 1, or the phase 2, which is these results of these soil borings. And we would say, in this case, yes, we've got both a phase 1 and a phase 2, and here you go. And that would then help inform them of, okay, as they're laying out design for the site, like Dave was alluding to, maybe placing the parking lot over areas where there could be areas of concern as it relates to soil contamination. That essentially caps that soil. It doesn't need to be dug out and removed. Or vice versa, maybe they say, we really want to have green space here, and in that case, maybe they do remediate soils or place a cap on top of those soils. So I would say that those are all things that they would look at as part of a phase 1 and phase 2 prior to redevelopment. So that's kind of the high-level view there.
Prior to redevelopment, and
Any other questions, Mr. Davis? If not, we'll move on. Councilor
I
White.
just wanted to make some closing comments if I can, because having lived on this area for years, it's always been a concern in regards to brownfields and the lack of investment, and looking at some of those concerns. This discussion started way before 2019, if I'm not mistaken. At that time, if the South Bend Heritage Foundation was going to be building permanent housing on that site, and there were a lot of concerns that were raised to the point that the council members decided to wait. And it was my understanding that the first round of testing had been done or was being done, but some of the developers felt that they had approval to move forward, and the second testing had not been done. Is that correct? I want to make sure I have all my facts. And I think that's when we became aware that there was a need to do the second round of testing. I'm talking about the West Washington site.
We found no evidence of extensive site-wide sampling in any of the box of records that we obtained from South Bend Heritage. All that we were able to find was record that tanks had been removed on the western portion of the site and sampling right where those tanks were, but we found no record of additional sampling across the whole rest of the site. So that was a big question mark for us, what the site conditions were. So we found no record of extensive sampling.
Okay. And I think it's, individuals have a right to ask questions. I think that's one form of democracy. And it's not to try to stop any type of development, but I think that as we continue to look at, we know that the city of South Bend and other cities, they have a lot of ground fields, it's just part of being, if you have a filling station, you need to look at all kinds of things. And it's good conversation, and I really appreciate the collaboration with the health department, with MACOG, with the county commissioners, with yourself, and with council members as well, because we have a responsibility to ensure that we do ask these tough questions and that we have the very best, information as possible. And having lived in that area for quite some time, I understand the concerns that the residents had, and some of them who's still there, which is very, very few, they still have that concern. They want to make sure that they live in safe, clean neighborhoods, and we have the responsibility to ensure that that is the case. So those are my comments. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yes, Councilor.
I just have a comment too. I really do want to thank you for the presentation that you've provided. I think this information just provides really good information for the neighborhood and the community in general to know where things stand and how we can move forward. I do understand that, EPA standards change over time and with changes in federal administration. And so I think what I want to leave us with is that standards continually change, and trust that that we are all watching that city government, our county, and so as these kinds of EPA standards do change, that we come back to some of these questions and sites and continue to assure that that we are, I guess, up to current standards and keeping our residents safe. So, thank you.
Thank you. Clerk Jones, can you see if there's anyone in the virtual audience that has any questions? I'll turn to the public. Are there any questions or comments from the public?
Actually, Councilmember Davis still had his hand up.
Counselor Davis?
Yeah, look, I was trying to say something. I don't know. My computer finally took over and I got it back on my computer, so thank God. The question so this conversation goes a little bit further than just this particular area, although it is a very important space in this community. I don't know if anyone remembers this, but probably about a year ago when I talked about the areas over in the 6th District where you have like the industrial park area, Walnut Street, going south towards Indiana Street is off to the left and also to the right. And I was talking about how in order for us to begin to recruit employers or new employers or even maybe housing developers, those areas will have to be cleaned up in order to even start having those conversations with those particular investors, perhaps. And so I think it makes sense, obviously, to have this discussion about a particular area, but overall, in areas that have not been developed and have not had any sort of investment in the last several decades, there's a larger discussion here. It's the same conversation we had over here about Becks Lake as well. It's the same conversation. Yes, we are a Rust Belt city, and we have moved on from that time. So what do we do to cover ourselves or to make ourselves or prime ourselves for the future development? It's a better conversation. Not to say this conversation is bad. I just think overall South Bend deserves a higher level of investment to help clean up some of these areas. I remember I was on council at one point in time when we were cleaning up the area where Initiative Park is at right now, and how that, took time for the grants to come in and get it cleaned up, but it was an intentional effort to clean up that entire area. It took maybe about a year and a half, but it happened to work. And so if the city is interested in growing and being able to recruit people in here, we have to clean up those areas, no matter how small or how large it is. No one wants to deal with any contamination in any level, at any level in any area. They move away from it because it's a headache. Thank you so much for your hard work, Karen and Sharon, on this one, and all those who are from that helped from MACOG, city staff, etc. But it's a larger discussion, and in order for South Bend to return to its greatness, those areas have to be cleaned up.
Thank you so much for your input and your comments. Duly noted for the record. At this time, I'll open it up to the public. And while we're waiting on the public to come up, I will say if you are here for Bill number 1123 or 1723 or 1823, they have been tabled until May 22nd. Again, 1123, 1723, and 1823 have been tabled until May 22nd. So if you are here and you are here for those purposes, you can leave if you will. Mr. Bogner.
Jim Bogner, 807 West Washington Street, South Bend, Indiana, 46601. I want to thank the city for their presentation and their concerns in MACOG, and also the county and the folks in government that have done this. One of the things that I did not hear this evening was something that concerned me deeply, and that is been talked about at the federal level. You can go take a look at it anywhere you please to with the EPA, and that is environmental justice and contaminated sites. Also, the Justice 40 initiative. For the first time in our nation's history, the federal government has made a goal that 40% of the overall benefits of certain federal investments flow to disadvantaged communities that are marginalized, underserved, and overburdened by pollution. What kind of investments fall in the Justice 40 initiative? Climate change, clean energy, energy efficiency, clean transit, affordable and sustainable housing, training and workforce development, remediation and reduction of legacy pollution, and development of critical clean water and wastewater infrastructure. I think there's an opportunity here to ask community investment and the administration to focus a little bit more on justice, because it has primarily been the poor, the disadvantaged, the African American community that has suffered because of this. And I think it's time to say that if we are all members of Team South Bend, there are parts of this city that don't really need South Bend's help, but there are other areas that do. And if you've got part of the team that needs a little bit of help, you've got to go to it. You've got to care for it. And accepting that we have these problems and moving forward with it is something that I think is critical. It's not easy for anyone to get up here and talk about this. Sometimes I think the city would rather me just disappear. I would like to see this area cleaned up. I think it can do a better job. I'm grateful for what has been done and for the people who have done it. But I do think that we owe it to places, especially on the west side of this community, to restore some honor and some dignity and some proper housing and make it a much more pleasant place to live. And it's hard. We all know it's hard, but we can do it. And if we really are a team, as we all say we want to be, then we've got to go to parts of the team that need the most help, and that's the west side. I want to thank council for their time. I know I've been a bit of a pest. I want to thank the administration for their work. It's never been easy, but I appreciate it. And I hope that out of this, we will take a look at what the EPA is offering. We will look at more grants. We will move forward, not just with this area, but other areas on the west side, and give it the help it deserves. And I thank everybody for their time and their energy, and I appreciate the privilege of your time, and have a good evening.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the presentation. We really appreciate it. At this time, I would like to entertain a motion to resolve into the committee of the whole.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. The roll, please.
Aye.
Councilmember Wax?
Aye.
Might not be able to hear you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Let's keep going.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember White?
Present.
Aye.
Councilmember Tomas Morgan?
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond? Council, Vice President Nisgowsky?
Aye.
President McBride?
Aye.
7 ayes.
All right. Again, we want to announce that if you're here for Bill 11-23, it's been tabled to May 22nd. If you're here for Bill 17-23, it's been tabled to May 22nd. And Bill 18-23, it's been tabled to May 22nd. And so now, the Committee of the Whole is in session. This is the portion of the council's meeting where bills are given a second reading and public hearing. I wish to share with you that bills that will be given a second reading and public hearing have been given a first reading and set for a committee meeting and public hearing prior to this evening's meeting. In addition, you will hear from the chairperson of the committee where the bill was discussed and the results of their discussion. If the proposed ordinance is a zoning ordinance, a report from staff members will be given. In all other situations, the formal presentation on the proposed ordinance will immediately follow the committee report. The formal presentation shall be on time. Clerk Jones, would you please give Bill 19-22 a second reading?
1923.
That's it. I'm sorry, 1923, sorry.
1923, public hearing on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, approving a petition of the Advisory Board of Zoning Appeals for the property located at 506 North Olive Street, Councilmanic District Number 2, in the City of South Bend, Indiana.
All right, is there a committee report?
On behalf of zoning and annexation, I'm not on the committee. Who's the vice?
Sherry, yeah, she's the vice president, aren't you? No, Henry is.
Henry's the vice.
Counselor Davis?
I am, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. We send this bill to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
To the committee of the whole?
I'm sorry, we send this bill to the committee of the whole with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you.
Okay. Is the petitioner present? She is. I ask that you state your name and your address and share with us key points regarding the bill that's before us.
Good evening, Angela Smith, Zoning Administrator for the City of South Bend with offices located on the 14th floor. The petition before you this evening is for 506 Olive Street at the corner of Bertrand and Olive. The petitioner is seeking a special exception to allow for vehicle repair. The property has historically been auto-oriented. It was a gas station, then it was a vehicle repair, and then it was a car sales, and now they want to legalize it as a vehicle repair again. And that's what the petition is here for you this afternoon. The property itself is not proposing any changes other than to bring up the code for the landscaping. So this is the current site. They would be working to bring up the access points to meet the engineering standards, to add a parking area screening buffer, and to add streetscape landscaping. The rest of the site at this time is proposed to essentially remain as is to allow for the continued use as an auto repair. This comes to you from the Board of Zoning Appeals with a favorable recommendation, and the petitioner is present.
Anything you'd like to share with us?
Well, my name is Cleveland Brown. I own 506 North Olive. And like I said, this place is just a legendary place to me. You know, I probably started here at 12 years old. And then it was sold to someone else. And then here 40 years later, here I am right back on the same corner. So, you know, there's probably 100 people in the area that I've done a lot of work for, even a lot of people down here. You know, so I just love taking care of the community and keeping everybody getting back and forth to work. That's really what it's about, you know. And then, like I said earlier, you know, I like to grab a few of these kids that's real bad and teach them something. That's really what's wrong with some of these kids. They don't have anything to do, no guidance. You know, so give them a little bit of that. I believe things will change in the neighborhood. Thank you.
All right. We had extensive conversations in the committee, but council members, do you have any questions for the petitioner at all?
Yes, I do. I have a question, Councilmember Lee.
Go ahead.
Mr. Brown, you stated that you wanted to help provide opportunity to youth to learn a skill.
That's correct.
My question to you, have you taken that a bit further? I know that the city delivers like Inspire grants and so many other things to help undergird nonprofits, perhaps with financial backing to help move along the initiative to help youth.
Yep.
I think that because you have a space, you have a talent, you have a skill as well to help teach and also to help give someone a job. I think that your conversation will be a natural conversation with maybe, I don't know if it's Maurice Scott that's over that program still or someone else. But since this is in front of me, in front of us, and the summer is coming and we need our kids employed and also busy doing something worthwhile, I think it'll probably be a good conversation to bring in those who are a part of the city, who does the funding for that particular grant. I don't know if the day has passed or not, but to see if you can get some of that funding to employ some youth in your yard.
Okay, that is correct, you know, and
So I'm not sure.
yeah, those are a lot of things that I thought about, you know, but I guess I have to pass this stage first.
I'm sure you're going to pass it, so that's why I'm bringing it up. So I don't know who on the council is connected to that resource, but I'm hoping that somebody on this council can help point him in the right direction to help develop that discussion and that conversation, or hopefully that opportunity.
Well, I pray to God that they do too, because this is an opportunity right here for a lot of kids. I mean, I was a kid, and I was trained very well, sent to trade school and everything, and it's really not that hard. If I can do it, anybody can do it.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Any other council members with any questions or statements? All right.
Councilmember Lee,
Yes, Mr. Davis.
who was that conduit for that program?
It would be the second district council person.
I'm asking for help, sir. So I'm asking you, who was the conduit for that program?
Are you talking about, you said Ignite grants, or what particular, is it, are you talking about the Alive and Free grants?
Whatever grant that can help provide him with the funding to help employ and train a youth or youths for that particular, for what he's going after.
Oh, that would probably be community investments, wouldn't it?
I'm not sure, sir. That's why I'm asking. I can't answer that question. It's a body of 9 people, so someone has the answer. I just don't have the answer. So that means,
What we'll do, we'll look into it and figure
I'll
it out.
follow up with Mr. Bauer with community investment. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right. At this time, we'll go to the public hearing portion. Clerk Jones, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak in favor of Bill 19-22? 23. I looked right at it. I'm sorry.
I don't see anyone virtually from the, we do have one person in the audience.
Okay, well, please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, Roosevelt Stewart, 1222 Huey, South Bend, Indiana, 46628. Me and Mr. Brown spoke previously a couple times before. He has a business over there that he's been running, and also have a piece of property over there as well. And we share both of the same interests as far as like serving and finding something for our teenage at-risk youth in that area. I serviced that building prior before you got there, as far as like painting and things of that nature, and we had youth kind of watching. So I'm in support of him, and as far as like the funding into, I think that he should be led to directing, to finding those resources so he can get that vision off the ground. So I'm in support of that.
All right, thank you very much, appreciate it. Anyone else? Clerk Jones, is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition?
I'm looking to see if there's anyone. Nope, I don't see anyone wishing to speak in opposition of this bill.
Okay. Well, at this point, the public hearing on Bill 19-23 is now closed. Council members, would you like to make any statements? Yes.
Just want to thank you for all your efforts. It's always wonderful when you have a business that's not only, well, obviously the purpose of a business is to make money and support you and your family. It's always nice when you have a business owner that's looking beyond that and trying to see how he could lift up other people along the way. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I just want to say I've been knowing you and the family for a long time, and thank you for your hard work and giving back to the community. You know, we grew up on that side of town, and so a lot of service in our vehicles. So thank you to you and your family for all of the hard work you've done and what's to come.
Just thank you for your continued efforts in the community, and this will help uplift the neighborhood, as you had spoken earlier, as well as helping our youth. So, you know, I'm a for sure yes on this when we vote on it.
And I would just like to say that 5 generations of Browns have been fixing cars and doing repairs in this city. We've had experiences as with our snowplow truck for the church. Mr. Brown fixed the transmission on it, and when it wasn't quite right, he went back and fixed it again and got it right. So I am very much in support of you and your entrepreneurial spirit, and not only that, but your vision to do something to help the kids. That area on Olive and Bertrand is a very troubled area with some troubled spots, and hopefully this will be a place of hope in that neighborhood.
Well, can I say one thing? I'm from that area.
Yeah.
I grew up right there in between Lincoln Way and Western, and it is real bad there. But I'm not scared, you know, not scared at all, you know. And everybody that comes by there, every kid that comes by there, instead of just, attacking them, you just talk to them and teach, because that's what's wrong in this community. The teaching has stopped.
That's right.
You know, and it's got to start back up, or we're going to never have control of the youngsters again, ever.
That's right. And mentors are important.
Yeah.
Councilwoman Thomas Morgan?
Since we're going to, I think everything has been said. I just thank you for your investment and continued work and investment in our city and with the youth that you do. Thank you.
That's right.
I would just like to, I think we go way back, I'm not going to say how long with the, but your father, grandfather, I know, okay. But I would like to thank you for the point of wisdom that you just shared, that they just need someone to talk with them, to listen, give them opportunity, because all of us, we've been given opportunities, and we would not be where we're at now without having someone who was willing to invest and pour into us and show us that there's a better way. So I really, really appreciate, and I know that your family, they're smiling on you at this time.
All right. We'll go to our online people. Before, we'll do that. Okay, Mr. Bowers came up and.
Well, just want to say thank you, Mr. Brown. To address Councilmember Davis, I think, Mr. Brown, Angela hopefully already shared this with you at committee, but Vibrant Places is our matching grant program for business owners. So as far as making those improvements to your parking lot, adding that barrier. It's a matching grant program, so it can match 50% of those investments. So would just encourage, that's one option for business owners. We did recently expand that program, so it's citywide eligibility for locally owned businesses to get those matching funds. So we'll make sure you have the link, and we can work on that. Thank you. Appreciate it.
We see Councilman Troy Warner is with us. Would you like to have anything to say, or?
No, I think everything has been said. Thank you.
All right. And Mr. Davis, any last statements?
Yeah, I think Caleb had it wrong. He was asking about, and I could be wrong, but he was saying something about a matching grant for facade and parking lot, et cetera. That wasn't the conversation. The conversation was about the Ignite grant that many nonprofits get to help deliver youth services. My question was, is or can he be eligible for that same type of grant if he's talking about employing youth? That's basically what those grants are meant for, whether it's services or is meant for payment, right? And so that's what that's the conversation. I was trying to help undergird him with what he would need to make good on his dream, if those resources are available. That is my question. It wasn't about a facade grant. It wasn't about anything matching.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Well, I will now entertain a motion regarding Bill 19-23.
Motion to send to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Clerk Jones, please call the roll.
Councilmember Lee,
Aye.
Councilmember Warner, Councilmember Warner,
I don't know if he heard
you
you.
gotta turn your mic.
Councilman Wa-
Speaking to your,
You gotta turn your mic on.
Unmute yourself.
Aye.
Councilmember Wax,
Aye.
Councilmember White,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomas Morgan,
aye.
Vice President Niskoski,
Aye.
Councilmember Davis,
Before I deliver my vote again, I'm not sure if we're clear on what I was asking for. So are we going to move forward, or is somebody going to figure that out, or is that available? I mean,
Mr. Davis, hold on one second. President McBride said that she would check to make sure the
okay,
right.
okay,
She-
okay, that's fine.
She said she would check to make sure that she
Thank
had
you.
the right.
My answer is aye. Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Okay, well, we wanted to make sure you
Point
was
of
clear on
order,
that.
on the vote. State law requires that Mr. Davis's camera be activated to be able to vote.
That's correct.
That's true. Mr. Davis, can you please turn your camera on to vote, please?
looks like it is. That's his picture. There he is.
Is it on? Because I don't see it.
We
It's
can't see
on,
it.
but you
on,
might
but we
want to
don't see you.
tilt it a little bit so we can see your face.
There you go.
There you go.
You got me now? Can you see
Yeah.
me?
Yeah.
Great. You want me to say aye again?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Warner, aye, Mr. Warner. Thank you, Mr. Warner.
President McBride,
It's just what state
Aye.
law requires. I didn't
Aye.
write it.
okay, we have 8 ayes.
All right, thank you. It will be sent to full council with a favorable recommendation. I will now entertain a motion to rise from the committee of the whole and report back to the full council.
So moved.
It's been moved and second. Clerk Jones, please call the roll.
Councilmember Warner, Councilmember Warner,
Councilmember Warner?
I think he can't.
Aye.
Councilmember Wax,
Aye.
Councilmember White,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomas Morgan,
Aye.
Vice President Niskoski,
Aye.
Councilmember Davis,
Aye.
Got to turn your camera on.
It is on.
it's on. Councilmember Lee,
Aye.
President McBride,
Aye.
8 ayes.
All right. Motion carries.
The full council is back in session. This portion of our meeting is where bills are given a third reading and action is taken regarding bills that were heard during the committee of the whole. Clerk Jones, will you give Bill 1923 a third reading?
1923, third reading on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, approving a petition of the Advisory Board of Zoning Appeals for the property located at 506 North Olive Street, Councilmanic District Number 2, in the City of South Bend, Indiana.
Thank you. Council Lee, is there a recommendation from the committee of the whole regarding Bill 1923?
Yeah, Bill 1923 was heard in the committee of the whole, and it comes to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
I will now entertain a motion regarding Bill 1923.
I would like to make a motion that Bill 19-23 would be passed.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Clerk Jones, the roll, please.
Councilmember Wax,
Aye.
Councilmember White,
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas Morgan,
Aye.
Vice President Niskoski,
Aye.
Councilmember Davis,
Aye.
Councilmember Lee,
Aye.
Councilmember Warner,
Aye.
President McBride.
Aye.
8 ayes.
Thank you. Bill 1923 has been adopted. Resolutions. This is the portion of the council meeting where the common council hear bills filed as proposed resolutions. The title of each proposed resolution is read by the city clerk. A report from the committee chairperson of the stand committee to which the bill was referred to for an advisory review and recommendation is then given. During the public portion on each proposed resolution, members of the public are invited to address the council. We ask that you please give your name, address, and comments on the bill. If you have any questions, they will be addressed by the presenter during their rebuttal. Each member of the public is limited to 5 minutes, with those speaking in favor going first, followed by those in opposition, then a 5-minute rebuttal for the presenter of the bill. Clerk Jones, will you please give Bill 23-21 a first reading?
2321, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, designating certain areas within the City of South Bend, Indiana, commonly known as 3201 West Calvert Street, South Bend, 46613, an economic revitalization area for purposes of a 5-year personal property tax abatement for Verbio North America LLC.
Thank you. Councilor White?
I would like to make a motion, if I can, that Resolution 23-21 and 23-22 be heard together for purposes only for the public hearing.
Second. Clerk Jones, will you call the roll, please?
Yes. Councilmember White,
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas Morgan,
Aye.
Councilmember Niskoski,
Aye.
or Vice President Niskoski, Councilmember Davis,
Aye.
Councilmember Lee,
Aye.
Councilmember Warner,
Aye.
I don't think it's on. I don't think it's up. Okay, Councilmember Wax,
Aye.
President McBride.
Aye.
8
Thank you.
ayes.
Clerk Jones, could you read Resolution 23-22?
2322, a resolution.
One moment,
Yes.
We just have a comment in the chat. If the clerk could speak directly into the
I don't think
microphone.
her
people
microphone
could
is
hear.
not on. We
Is
don't
it
think
not
it's
on?
so.
Because I'm right here, so I don't know if
You
you
want
can turn it up.
to, can you see if one of these cords will reach? Thank you so much.
Oh, good idea.
Okay. 2322, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, designating certain areas within the City of South Bend, Indiana, commonly known as 3201 West Calvert Street, South Bend, Indiana, 46613, an economic revitalization area for purposes of an 8-year real property tax abatement for Verbio North America LLC.
Thank you. You can take it with you. The cord reaches. Yes. Thank you so much. Please state your name and address for the record.
Eric Lovich, Director of Growth and Opportunity within the Department of Community Investment with offices on the 14th floor of this building.
Thank you.
Council, before you for your consideration is a package of 2 declaratory resolutions for tax abatement. for a company named Verbio North America LLC. Verbio has purchased South Bend Ethanol, the facility out on West Calvert Street, and will be investing over $230 million into the facility to upgrade the current process of ethanol production and also to create new renewable natural gas. Quite an investment, over $215 million in new personal property will be installed on the property. Thus, this is the reason why there are two separate abatements for your consideration. Verbio North America LLC is applying for two separate abatements. The first is a 5-year personal property tax abatement. Listed on your screen, you will see examples of the manufacturing equipment that would be eligible for a personal property tax abatement. And as I mentioned, about $220 million total in new equipment and software will be installed onto the property. Through this investment, Verbio North America will retain all of the current jobs at the facility, and within 12 months, we'll create 8 brand-new jobs, high-paying jobs, engineers, roughly making, approximately $100,000 per position. On your screen, you'll see the kind of the numbers related to the personal property tax abatement. One thing to point out, that there is current personal property on the property which pays property tax. So the new equipment will be on top of that. What you can see is that just based on our estimates, we're looking at total estimated taxes during the abatement upwards to about $20 million, 19.2 roughly, and a good portion of that would be abated. Overall, we expect Verbio to pay about $3.5 million in new taxes over this 5-year period. On the screen, you can see that we're looking at by year 10, between years 6 and 10 after the abatement expires, that they would pay roughly $11 million in new taxes. Again, this is new taxes on top of what's already being paid. That's just as you look, this is the abatement schedule and the estimates that we've provided through our analysis. Shifting gears now to the real property. So in order for them to make this investment, they will have to build an estimated 10 new buildings on the property, totaling about 60,000 square feet. Their investment in building this real property is about $11 million. They would qualify for an 8-year property tax abatement, which is what we're presenting for your consideration. Current taxes on the property, this is real property taxes, not personal property taxes, are about $150,000 per year. With an $11 million investment, we anticipate that the taxes following completion of the project would increase about $300,000 per year. The first year of the abatement alone, with the abatement in place, they would still pay $65,000 more that first year than what the city is currently receiving through the property. Again, you can see the numbers on your screen. During the life of the abatement, we estimate about $3.6 million in estimated taxes. Out of that amount, roughly $800,000 would be abated. Again, it's a significant investment in a property on the west side of town that we're very excited about. The president of Verbio North America LLC is here. He would like to say a few words, provide a presentation, and answer questions related to the project.
Good evening, while we're getting the logistics going. My name is Greg Northrup. I live in Grand Rapids, Michigan, but I'm happy to be in South Bend tonight talking to you, the members of the council. This is a truly wonderful time for our company. Hopefully, after I get done with this presentation, you'll agree with me it's a wonderful investment for the city of South Bend. And as I alluded to earlier this afternoon, it's an important part of our overall energy strategy here in the United States as we develop renewables to mix our diversity of supply. And so First of all, I want to thank the city staff for their support. We've been in conversation with them since early March to talk about this investment. We've been in a due diligence stage on potentially purchasing this site about for the last 6 months. And what I'll tell you, before I get into the details of who Verbio is and a little bit of background, is there's over 200 ethanol plants in the United States today that are operating that could be potential locations for us to do what we're proposing to do here in South Bend. And we've spent time looking at those opportunities in other states and other locations. And we will continue to do that because our plan is to build out multiple facilities here in the United States as part of our process. We debated about South Bend internally a number of times as to whether this is the right decision for us to make at this point in time. And as you can imagine, based on the amount of money that we're proposing to spend, this was not an easy decision for us to make without having given good thought to why it is that we're doing it. The long and short of it is, I would suggest to you, if we're not making this decision, this community could be looking at a plant that would be closed. But for the investment that we will be making, we can change that scenario so that, in fact, we will have a plant that will be successfully operating, not only making ethanol as it does today, but making renewable natural gas. And with that foundation, let me just do a quick recap for you as to who Verbio is. I happily am the first employee that was hired in the United States to run the Verbio North American operations. Our company, Verbio, has been in operation for over 25 years. Our CEO and founder is a grower, a person that's been involved in agriculture. And so when you listen to me talk about our commitment to ag and ag's piece of the equation here, you can understand our background and our commitment to using ag residues as part of a process. It's not food, it's ag residues that we're using to make renewable energy. So that history comes with us as part of our long-term background. We're located in a number of countries. We have a rice straw project in India. Same thing, waste stream that's being used to make renewable natural gas there. We own a plant in Nevada, Iowa, which I'll show you a picture of here, that began operation in 2021, making renewable natural gas. In the fourth quarter of this year, we will start making renewable ethanol at the same site and using that ethanol output to actually make more renewable gas at that site. The same thing we're proposing to do here in South Bend. We're a $1 billion company in terms of sales. When I started with this group 5 years ago, we had 500 employees. Today, we have 1,000. In Nevada, we have close to 100 employees. In South Bend, I'm happy to report, as Eric alluded to, that we will retain 61 of the current employees, and we will add 8 additional positions over the course of the next 12 months in professional positions, additional resources for us as it relates to engineers. And what you'll learn as you look more into Verbio's history, our strength is our technology. We have our own internal engineering capability. We're very protective of our proprietary information. We do things that have made us very successful as a company and made us learn how to operate in the renewable energy industry. If you look at the industry and read some of the horror tales, there's a lot of things that haven't happened very well in renewables. And so I'm very cautious about what I say and what we do in the sense of making sure that we actually walk our talk. And so we've done that, and I'm proud to represent the company here today. We're the largest producer of biomethane, or renewable natural gas. We're also in the ethanol business, and we're in the biodiesel business. So we understand all facets of the renewable energy business as it relates to this project. I'll point out to you, and just to give some data, in the lower right-hand corner, it says 3.5 million MMCF of natural gas. At this site, when it's fully developed, we will make 2.8 million MMCF, or almost as much as we currently make. It also, and there's a later slide that I'll show you, that's equal to about 1 or 2% of the total natural gas that's used in the state of Iowa on an annual basis. So while 1 or 2% might seem like a lot, it's coming from a waste stream that we're adding to the mix of product that actually can be used here in the state or elsewhere in the country for that matter. So these are the locations for other facilities. One of the things I'll reinforce that I think I alluded to earlier today, we're self-funded. So we're using internal cash flows to make these investments. We're not seeking government grants or loans as a way to back up our project. We believe in what we do, and for that reason, we've been slow to expand, but I hope to see accelerations in that growth, and South Bend is another step along the way for us. This is, we don't have enough time tonight, but what this intended to do is to show you that everything we do is in a closed-loop process. So we take materials in, we process those materials, we reuse them in other portions of the plant. So I'll tell you in a minute about what we're going to do with stillage, which is the waste stream from ethanol. But we take those products, and when we get all done, in Nevada, for example, we make what's called humus. And basically, it's a compost-type material. So we take the corn stover that we put in there to our anaerobic digestion process. When we're done removing the carbon to make methane, we end up with a compost-type material that's returned to the land. And we return phosphates and nitrogens back to the soil. So we have a great relationship with growers. We're helping them with a revenue stream for their corn stover, and then we're helping them with a soil amendment on the backside of our process. So everything is closed loop in terms of what we're doing. We have a great relationship here in South Bend, thanks to the work of the prior management with the growers in this area. And I think the feedback I've gotten has been, wow, this is going to be great. Because I can tell you what, the growers had concerns about whether they were still going to have a revenue stream as it relates to corn sales for this facility. This is our largest facility. It's in Svett, Germany. And I say that as well as the Germans would pronounce that, so trust me. On the left-hand side, you'll see where it's biomethane. The large tanks there are anaerobic digestion tanks. What happens, material goes in there. It's an airtight oxygen, no oxygen environment, and that's what allows the bugs inside to process the materials into biomethane. No different than what a cow does in terms of when they're processing materials through their system, but similar in concept, except we do it with one tank instead of 7 stomachs, so we're a little bit more efficient from that standpoint. This site also has the biodiesel and the bioethanol, as you'll see at the top, and we integrate the ethanol and the biomethane at this location. We do the same thing in Zorbik, methane and ethanol coming together. So what's different about what we're doing? In a traditional ethanol plant, they make ethanol. In the case of this location, we hope to make 85 million gallons of ethanol. We don't currently do it at that level, but that's the plan. And if we're really successful, we will make more down the road. But at this point, my commitment is to get us back to the design level of the plant, which is 85 million. They produce a waste stream, which is called stillage. Typically, the stillage is turned into what's called dried distillers grains, and that's used as a feed supplement for cattle or other animals. To make it dry, obviously, as the name infers, you have to heat it up, and you dry it, and you spend energy drying it to make this material that we give as feed. What are we going to do? We're going to take the stillage, and that becomes the feedstock for our anaerobic digestion process. So in the large tanks that you see, the stillage will go from the ethanol production into the large tanks to make more renewable natural gas or more methane. So we're basically reusing that waste stream in a way that's much more effective in the sense that we're reducing the energy consumption that's required, and at the same time creating a product that we need as it relates to diversity of supply as renewable natural gas. This is our facility in Nevada. Guess what? It looks just like the other facilities because we apply the same design techniques, the same strategies for what we're doing here in the U.S. as what we've been doing in Germany for the last 10 to 15 years with the same process. This is not new technology. This is what we've been doing successfully, and now we're bringing that process to the United States and replicating it here. What makes us different is your ethanol plant will now become a biorefinery. Instead of just making ethanol, you'll make renewable natural gas as part of the production process. As I say, it looks exactly the same. There's one less tank here because I took this picture on a sunny day. There's actually 16 tanks as we're proposing for this site, which I'll show you in a minute. So this is the existing site in South Bend. To the west of the site, there's vacant area there. And so on the left-hand side of this slide where you see the 16 blue dots, those are the anaerobic digestion tanks that we're going to put in to make renewable natural gas at this site. Below that are a series of buildings, and so when Eric talked about 10 buildings that we're building, you can see a lot of these square boxes represent new buildings that will be part of our construction process. But there are things to do like removing sulfur and carbon dioxide, getting gas up to pressure. When we inject into the system, the natural gas system that's owned by NEPSCO, we have to increase the pressure to be able to put it into their pipeline. Another caveat, so you understand this, when we make upgraded renewable natural gas, it has to look exactly like fossil natural gas. Because when we inject a molecule into the pipeline that goes into the distribution system for Indiana and the rest of this country, that molecule has to look exactly the same. So when it comes to your home to be used in your furnace or your water heater, the water heater wants to make sure I'm getting the product I'm supposed to get. So our product has to look exactly like the product that's being used as a fossil-based product in the rest of the U.S. natural gas system, okay? Which means we're held to a very high standard because the utilities won't let us inject unless we meet their requirements. And I can tell you there's lots of testing equipment and measuring equipment to make sure we do exactly what we said. We'll be making fertilizer at this site for resale back to our growers as partners. Humus, which I mentioned, was the waste product that will go back as a soil amendment. And then the recycle, one other point. We recycle all of our water. Again, continuous loop. We're not pulling new water sources from the city or from the wells. We're going to continue to use. So basically, the water requirement will not change significantly from where it is. I'm not familiar with this, but apparently the operation of the plant has been helpful to the city as it relates to water issues potentially in that area. And so I think we're a benefit to the community at the same time as a result of that. This is that slide I talked about where the line represents the amount of gas that's used in the state of Indiana on an annual basis. And up in the corner there is the amount that we will produce at the facility. So you get a sense of how much gas you actually use here, how much are we going to make as part of our production process. And while it doesn't seem like a big number, it is a big number in the sense of the amount that we're producing at the scale that we're doing using waste streams to do this. So, $230 million of new investment, 85 million gallons of continued ethanol production. The good news for us is we have a really well-trained workforce, and we took over on May 1st. We had a team of people here meeting with all of the employees. I'm happy to report that went very smoothly. I think I can report faithfully that they're very happy that they have a new investor because it gives them a future. Because they know what's going on at the plant probably better than you and I do in terms of what needs to be done. I always push our people to make sure you listen to your people because they're the ones that actually know what's going on. 2.8 BCF of gas, 61 employees retained, and then eight new positions. In the fact sheet that I gave you, there's lots more details about what it is that this is all about. I'm happy to talk about this subject. At my age, to be doing renewable energy just is a really nice way to finish off things, and I feel really good about what I'm able to do, and I feel really good about what Verbiles wants to do in this community, and I want to thank you for considering the tax abatement because it will be important as part of one of the financial tools. You want to make sure that the investments you're making in us makes us successful, and that means we have to have a complement of financial tools to deal with a risk profile. So I thank you for considering supporting us, and I thank the committee this afternoon for their favorable support, at least in the first round of discussions, and I look forward to having many more with you. Any questions?
Thank you so much. At this time, I will turn to my colleagues to see if there are any questions at this time. Councilor Tomas Morgan.
Well, I just think it's worth reiterating a question that was raised earlier in committee, and if you can just speak briefly to it, Mr. Northrup. You'll be, the production of the facilities qualify for the new Section 48E investment tax credit authorized under the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022. So could you speak to the requirements of that?
Sure. One of the critical features of the Inflation Reduction Act is to improve America's reliability on renewable fuels. If you make renewable natural gas, that's one of the things that they're trying to incentivize as a federal process to improve our overall energy policy. That section provides for what's called an investment tax credit. It's equal to 30% of the capital investment. You'll receive that back when we file our income tax return. I can tell you that the IRS makes sure that we dots all the i's and crosses all the t's. As part of that, though, we'll have a commitment to pay prevailing wage rates. And in fact, our wage rates will be 24% above the average here in South Bend as it is. We will also have a commitment to hire apprentices during the construction period, pipe fitters, electricians, those types of positions. And I'll tell you, as a technology company, we are big on interns, we're big on apprentices, because if you have good skill sets to operate these kinds of facilities, you need talented people. And we're willing to pay talented people to do great work.
Thank you, Mr. Northrop.
Thank you, Counselor Lee.
Yep. Just wanted to thank them for the investment, and again, to reiterate, when it comes to this tax abatement, that even after the first year, we're going to be getting $65,000 more than what we're getting currently. So again, we're not losing, we're gaining, plus we're getting investment in the community. 61 jobs that make $100,000 a year, and 8 new positions that will be, I mean, that's a win for this area. My final question is this: as a kid growing up in South Bend with the ethanol plant, we had to deal with the smell. And with what you guys are doing now, does that change? That will we not have to deal with the smell, or has technology changed that where it doesn't have that?
So, a good question. Obviously, these kinds of facilities have some potential issues as it relates to odor issues. I don't think there's any current odor issues with the ethanol operation that I'm aware of, and that was part of our due diligence assessment. The renewable natural gas production, the methane gas is made inside of the anaerobic digestion tanks, the large tanks that I showed you pictures of. Those are airtight tanks. The only way the gas gets out of there is either it's pulled through the pipe to be upgraded for pipeline quality and then injected into the system, or on the photo that is in your packet, there's 2 flares there. If we were to have a problem with the gas is moved to the flare, and then it's ignited and sent into the environment so that it's not causing any odor issues or any other kinds of potential hazard issues. It's a critical design feature of the plant, but that's the way we deal with it. So you shouldn't have odor issues.
Thank you very much.
Counselor Nisgonsky.
Thank you. And thank you so much for the presentation and for the potential investment with the ethanol plant. I think it's so important to secure the future for that facility, and I believe this is a wonderful opportunity. But I just want to go back, when you had talked about the fact sheet, you talked about the 61 jobs secured, another 8 jobs that you'll be hiring, but I believe in the presentation you made, you said the total project for this indirect impact on jobs is somewhere between 600 to 700 workers?
Yeah, if you look at the data that our good friends at the Chamber of Commerce actually put together for us, it's projected with the construction jobs that would be included as part of the process. And I don't think I alluded to this, but the construction will occur over a 3-year period with the commissioning expected in 2026. It's estimated that there's approximately 650 jobs that are created in terms of what we're doing, plus the construction jobs, plus the other jobs within the community. And on an ongoing basis, there will continue to be other jobs that are supported as a result of the direct job, and we have data on that as well. So I think if I recall the data, just for our plant only, the annual revenue is about $60 million coming from the payroll for our existing employees. And so it's obviously a significant, critical number, and it represents our commitment to our employees, but at the same time, it obviously brings revenue sources to the community over and above what we're going to pay in terms of taxes.
Thank you so much.
Counselor Wax.
Thank you. And just on the jobs theme for a minute, these are really high-paying jobs, both you said compared to the average, but if you just the number itself objectively, we're talking 6-figure jobs here. So Those are wonderful jobs to maintain and to increase potentially. We talked earlier today about the property tax, and I believe you stated that the property tax would be depreciated on a 30-year straight line depreciation. So that would mean, just to make sure that I understand, that the tax revenue of the personal property would decrease over each year, but it would continue on for about 30 years. Is that correct?
Right.
Were you able to, and I know there wasn't a lot of time between meetings, were you able to get a ballpark of what the total tax revenue might be on the new personal property?
You want to speak?
Councilmember Wax, I did run some numbers. Full honesty, I don't think they're accurate, but I tried doing the 30-year depreciation. Again, I have net taxes paid in the range of $85 million over 30 years. I don't know how accurate that is, but I did print this out so that I could give it to you for your, you can take your red pen to it if you.
Okay, I appreciate that, because especially when, sometimes when we're looking at personal property tax abatements, sometimes the personal property only lasts for 5 to 10 years. And when you're abating most of the front end, the question could be, what are we, from a revenue basis? Of course, there's other benefits to getting a project like this off the ground, like jobs or the other economic impacts in the area. But just from a pure tax revenue basis, the question is, what would we be getting in the future? And so I'm happy to hear that. I'll take with the caveat that I know that this is back of the napkin calculations last minute, but it's good to know that it'll be a very significant amount of tax revenue over the next.
Well, the other thing I would add
decades.
to that, and I think you had the question earlier today, what's the life of these assets? And so the tanks themselves, typically 40 to 50 years is not unheard of. So the asset will last well past the depreciation schedule. So at least that portion is covered for that period of time. So if these numbers needed a little bit fine tuning, I'd be happy to work with Eric and we can deal with it further if necessary. But I think it's a good investment for the city.
I got the answer that I need for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll turn to my council colleagues online, see if they have any comments or questions.
I do not.
Councilor Davis, thank you. Seeing none, I'll turn back to council. Well, no, it's public portion time. I'll open it up to the public. Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of Resolution 2321 or 2322? State your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. Good evening. Allison Herzig, Director of Economic Development, South Bend Regional Chamber, offices at 101 North Michigan Street. We just wanted to take an opportunity to come up and thank the council for considering Verbaio's proposition for our community. It's a significant investment. We're seeing an economic impact of the construction alone over the 3 years of $350 million. On top of the economic impact that was already referenced of the jobs. And so as we kind of look at the different companies that will be impacted by this investment and by the new workers, we see that it kind of rolls through the whole community. Building services will have 3 jobs supported. We have employment services of 2 jobs. And so it kind of extrapolates out when you look at how significant this is for South Bend and for our community. I really appreciate you taking the time to consider this. We are very excited about the possibilities. We look at the continued partnership with local farmers and businesses as a wonderful opportunity to support services that are already existing and jobs that already exist, as well as the commitment to sustainability is so very important, as you all know, and I'm thrilled that they are considering our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your comment. Anyone else? Clerk Jones, do you see anyone in the virtual audience wishing to speak in favor of either Resolution 2321 or 2322?
There is no one in the virtual audience expressing interest to speak in favor of this bill.
Thank you. I'll turn anyone wishing to speak in opposition of 2321 or 2322. You're welcome to come up to the podium.
Sharon Benicki, 3822 Ford Street. Not really opposed to it, but I do have a question. The smell was brought up. Last summer and the summer before that, the noise coming from the ethanol plant is very disruptive to the neighborhoods. And as Eli, I'll tell you, I don't live that close to it, but yet we could hear it. And if you go on Facebook, they were talking about it out into the county and across Lincoln Way. So
Anyone want to address that?
Are you finished?
Yeah.
So I'm not familiar with the noise issue. I know, Tucker, you want to address that?
Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. I'm Chuck Tuskin, General Manager of South Bend Ethanol, reside in South Bend. As regarding the noise issue that is related to the energy used, so the steam that is used on the back end of the process that Mr. Northrup was talking about, the stillage, where we dry the stillage, all of that initially, before we even have the new investment, is being worked on to eliminate the discharge of the high-pressure steam to the atmosphere. But once we get the RNG, that part of the process will be not used anymore. So again, we apologize for the sound, the noise, but we are currently working on it to eliminate the discharge to the atmosphere of steam.
Thank you so much. Does that satisfy your question, Ms. Benecki?
Summer will tell.
Thank you. I'm sure we'll see you again. Anyone else?
There's no one else expressing interest virtually to speak in opposition of this bill.
Thank you so much. With that, I'll turn back to my colleagues. What's your pleasure?
I would like to make a motion for the adoption of Resolution 23-21.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Clerk Jones, the roll, please.
Councilmember Thomas Morgan.
Aye.
Vice President Niskoski.
Aye.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Lee.
Aye.
Councilmember Warner.
Aye.
Councilmember Wax.
Aye.
Councilmember White.
Aye.
President McBride.
Aye.
8 ayes.
Thank you. Resolution 2321 has been adopted. I would like to entertain a motion regarding Bill 23, Resolution 2322.
Move for adoption.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Clerk Jones, the roll, please.
Vice President Niskoski.
Aye.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Lee.
Aye.
Councilmember Warner.
Aye.
Councilmember Wax.
Aye.
Councilmember White.
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas Morgan.
Aye.
President McBride.
Aye.
8 ayes.
Thank you. Resolution 2322 has been adopted. There are no bills on first reading. I'll turn to see, is there any unfinished business from council? Is there any new business from council? Seeing none, I will open it up to the privilege of the floor. Individuals who wish to address the council must state their name and residential address. Individuals will be limited to 3 minutes only. The maximum time for this portion of the meeting shall be 30 minutes. Individuals shall not be permitted to address topics which the council has heard previously on tonight's agenda. The council president may assign a topic raised by an individual during the privilege of the floor to the appropriate council member, and/or request the city clerk to contact a member of the city administration for review and topics assigned and shall be responded to at the next scheduled council meeting. Please state your name and address for the record. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Sue Keslam, 4022 Kennedy Drive in South Bend.
Thank you.
I would appreciate the council getting back to me on the items that I'm about to bring up. I still haven't heard back on the abatement reports or if the $0 for 10 years was legal. Also, when I go to look for information, it's great that there's videos of these meetings, but there's no transcripts. I'd like to suggest to the council and the clerk that you research something like Otter, AI, OTTER.ai. What happens is that the artificial intelligence listens to the meeting and creates a transcript. So this would be really nice for all of us.
Can you repeat that? Otter.
Otter, OTTER.ai. There are other transcription softwares, but I'm just suggesting one to start with. What I handed out to you is that there are missing financial reports. I'd like to see those appear on the website. In 2018, there was a citywide debt update to the council. I'd like to see you guys have a new debt update. And I'd also like to bring up that there are quite a few rape kits that have never been processed, and those women have never received justice. If the rape kits had been processed and put in the system, the DNA could have possibly found the perpetrators. It could have possibly prevented other rapes from occurring. Perhaps Mr. King, as part of the new police board, could put this on his agenda to review the unprocessed rape kits. They've been unprocessed for a long time. Some of them may have even timed out. I think that the women of our community deserve justice for that trauma. Obviously, then they are concerned that that perpetrator comes back to them again, which is very stressful for them. So I did, I'm not supposed to mention names, I did approach 2 council members about this issue, that I would like to see it a higher priority. So those are my issues, and if you could get back to me, I'd appreciate it. And I'd love to hear on the abatements, and especially on the missing financial reports. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Jones?
I just wanted to mention that on YouTube, they do the transcripts. That's where we get our transcripts from, is from YouTube. On the video, when you have a video, the transcript.
But the transcripts on YouTube are not the legal documents held by the city.
And we use Otter too, and theirs weren't real good either. So, but no, the video is the legal document.
I know, but I can't go through hours of videos to scan for the information I'm looking for.
Right, but you should be able to do that through YouTube. I mean, I know you said it's not legal, but you can do that.
Is there a legal opinion on that?
It's your preference. You can do it, but you have no need to, should have no need to.
I would prefer not to have to go through YouTube, and I would prefer that the city have legal documents and transcripts. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sharon Benicki, 3822 Ford Street. I'm just checking back in. Eli and I did spend 45 minutes together. He got to see my South Bend 6th District. He got to see Bob the Builder's house. He got to see the 2 houses that have been shot up by me. He got to see a lot of different things. And I'm hoping, Eli, through a different set of eyes than what you have seen before. And did you ever figure out why the speed limit sign's in the parking lot?
I have not.
I'll wait for you to get back to me on that. I just wanted to express my appreciation to Eli for giving me, and I did keep it at 45 minutes, but we did make a very good round tour of it. Also, this Wednesday is the Crime Stats meeting at the police department. And I was there last month, and some of the citizens are asking, why doesn't the city council people come? Do they get this information? I can't answer whether you get the same reports that we get, but the officer in charge did say that they don't invite the city council to come as council members. But I think it would do a world of good for the relationship if you came as citizens to listen to what the people there are saying, to hear what's going on in the neighborhoods, to hear the fears and what's going on. Now, I did have a police car parked in front of my house for 2 weeks. They picked it up Saturday, so we know it's just a matter of time before the 5th shooting happens in front. The gentleman 2 doors down was arrested a second time. They got him for resisting arrest, because one was driving his car away, then he fled from the scene, he wrecked the car, they caught him with a machine gun, and it eludes me what the 5th was, but the prosecutor dropped 3 of the 5 charges from Jump Street. The bond went from no bond to 1,000 bonds to he was released with promise to appear. The pressure needs to be put on the prosecutor because, you know, the police, like us, are getting tired of seeing the same people going to jail, slap on the hand, out you go. This child's father was arrested last year after their house raid. He got caught with guns and drugs and cocaine, and he got 1 year probation. So, and I mean, they're still doing what they do, and there's no incentive not to do it because the prosecutor's not doing what he needs to do. So whatever pressure you can put on the prosecutor would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Clerk Jones.
Just to also let Ms. Kessler know, we have transcripts on our team's video as well. So that would be legal.
Thank you. And for Ms. Banicki, thank you so much. I do attend weekly in my Dukeham's role with the police department separately from the community. So I'm in on those private meetings of what's going on in the community. So thank you for that. But it is very informative for us to stay informed with that information. Thank you.
President McBride,
Yes, Mr. Davis.
just a food for thought. Ms. Banicki probably has a better conversation with the mayor than you would with the council because the mayor is in direct control of the police department. I understand the council members are a part of the city government and also a part of the funding mechanisms of the police department. But as far as the enforcement tool and the conversation that she's asking that needs to happen between city government along with the prosecutor, probably will be best served with the mayor and the prosecutor versus council member and prosecutor. Just a thought.
Thank you for your input because it is county as well as I know I think the rape kits were under the prosecutor as well. But I will send an email to see the status, but I do know that years ago when we were trying to get the rape kits, that it fell under the prosecutors, but I will follow up as well.
The rape kits are held in freezers at the police department. Some of them got moved to a garage, and so that may have broken the chain of evidence on some of them.
Okay, thank you. I will follow up with that as well. Thank you, Mr. Davis. I will also advise or ask. I know Ms. Banicki will still come to council, but and maybe she have already reached out, but I will follow up with you as well, Ms. Banicki. Thank you. With that, this meeting stands adjourned. Thank you.